Hi guys, welcome to Little Wicket Railway. I'm Rob and this is episode 2 of the Little Wicket rebuild project. Episode 1 came out 9 months ago, way back in February, where I was showing you how I went about building baseboards. And it's been so long, you might have been wondering if there was ever going to be a second episode. Well, here it is, and there's loads of stuff to pack into it. I'll give you a progress update on the staging area, share a few design changes, and take a look at laying track and some of the challenges I've faced. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then please consider doing so, it would make me very happy. And if you hit that little bell icon, you'll be notified when the next episode comes out, probably in mid-2023 at this rate. I'll start by giving you an update on where I've got to so far. So if you remember from the original track plan, the idea is to have this lower staging level down here where I can make up a load of trains and have them ready to run. Over here, there will be a helix that will take them from this lower staging level up to a scenic level, which will be roughly at this sort of height. And in terms of progress, I'd say I was about 90% there with this staging level, and by the end of the video, I hope to have it completely finished off. Hi guys, Future Rob here doing the editing. This is a great example of why you don't film the introduction to a video before filming the main content. As you'll see, I don't get the staging finished off in this video because I got ill and then Christmas happened and life got in the way. There is some progress though, and I still hope you enjoy the video, but set your expectations now, it doesn't get finished. But there has been a big change from that original track plan to what I've got now, and you may have already spotted it if you remember from that first video about the baseboards I was building, because originally I planned to have the baseboards just running along this wall for the staging area. Since then, I've decided it probably makes sense to have a bit more staging and to extend it round this corner, and that has given me a significantly more space to keep trains. It did mean building a few more baseboards though, and that's taken up quite a bit of time. So we've gone from the 3 original baseboards that you saw me build in that first video to 5 baseboards that we've got now to accommodate this extra staging. And I will take you through each one of those in turn and show you what we're going to do with the final baseboard that still needs some work. Okay, let me quickly take you through what's on each of the 5 boards that make up the staging area, starting with this one, which is the smallest board, and it's one you saw me build in episode 1. Not a huge amount to say about this board. It's got the track that takes trains back around and into the staging area. Something that has changed since you last saw it though is that this board, like all the others down here, is now covered with a layer of Arborton. So this is the foam laminate flooring underlay stuff. It's an idea I stole from Charlie at Chadwick Model Railway, glued down with a bit of PVA, and I do think it makes a bit of a difference to the noise as trains run over the boards. Something to be aware of though is that it is fairly easily damaged, and you'll see as we go around I have been a bit careless, and where I've put tools down I've taken a few chunks out of it. This first board is attached to board number 2 using these M8 coach bolts, and board number 2 is actually quite a large board. It runs all the way from the wall over there up to here. It's got some electronics on it, ignore those for now. I'm going to do a completely separate episode on all the electronics that goes on top and under these boards. It's also got 8 sets of points on it though, and that takes the single in-road and splits it into 9 storage tracks. So we've got the 10 tracks along here, 1 coming in and 9 for storage. Where we've got these yellow markers, that denotes the start and end of a block. So I've used 2 insulated rail joiners here. And as you can see, the point work makes up its own block here because it's completely electrically isolated. And then these 9 storage tracks run into board number 3. Board 3 carries on into the corner of the room, and the most challenging thing about this board was getting all 10 tracks to go round the 90-degree corner with the correct track spacing, and I'll talk more about that later. We've got this small bridging section here, and then we're on to board 4. And board 4 basically just has the 10 tracks continued down towards the exit of the staging. And this is the 5th and final board of the staging area. And as you can see, this is the area that still hasn't had much work done on it, and we're going to complete this during the course of the video and hopefully get this all finished off. Oh, past Rob, so ambitious and naive. As I said, set your expectations, progress is made, but it doesn't get finished in this video. Also, what was I thinking? This is a terrible angle for highlighting my thinning hair. It's going to have 8 sets of points on it, And this is the exit of the staging area where all 10 tracks come together off board 4 and then head off into the helix. So those are the boards that make up the staging area. Boards 1 to 4 are now permanently installed. They're attached to the wall. Board number 5 is only temporarily in place because we're going to take that over to the workbench and carry on working on it later. When it came to attaching these boards to the wall and making sure they were perfectly level, there were a few bits of kit that I found really useful. So I thought I'd share those with you now, starting with the Duo Power Raw plug. Now my walls are made up of a layer of plasterboard, a thin air gap and then brickwork, and these are perfect for those types of walls. This bit bites into the plasterboard, this bit bites into the brickwork, and it gives a really strong anchor for some long screws that pass through the plywood at the back of the baseboard and into the wall. Next up is the laser level. So you put this on a stable surface at the height you want it to be at, you turn it on and it puts a laser line on the wall for you to work your way along. Perfect if you're trying to get something at the same height, nice and level. Before you go drilling into your walls, you'll probably want to check that you're not going to hit something you shouldn't be, like wiring. And this is where the Bosch multi-finder comes in. Now, I've had a few things like this before that have detected studs, metalwork and wiring, but they've all been a bit rubbish. This one's a bit more expensive, but it's really good. So you just turn it on, run it along the wall, and it'll tell you if there's something there that you don't want to be drilling into. The digital spirit level. So this is perfect for dropping onto your boards and just double checking that everything is nice and level. So that's how I've made sure everything is secure and level when it's attached to the wall. But on this side, I've had to make my own legs. And for that, I've just taken 2 bits of 18mm plywood, glued and screwed them together. This notch sits under the edge of the board, and then on the bottom I put one of these adjustable feet that I think are used for cabinets in kitchens. And this just makes sure that not only is everything level in this direction, but going across the boards I can just adjust this foot and make sure that it's completely level in that direction as well. So there we go. I don't think I've got a future in telesales, and I'm not sponsored by any of that stuff. I bought it all myself. And you could do everything I've just described using a tape measure and a spirit level, I'm sure. But these are bits of kit that I found really useful and I thought I'd share them with you. If you did want to go check them out, I'll leave affiliate links in the description below so you can go take a look if you want to. So now let's talk about track. This staging area contains the majority of the track work for the whole layout, and there's around 65 meters of the stuff down here. On the previous layout I used Hornby track, but this time I've switched over to Pico for the majority of the layout. And I'm using their streamlined range because it offers more options when it comes to sizes and types of points, for example. All of my track has come from Derails, and I thought it's worth giving them a plug because they're competitively priced. You only have to spend £20 for free shipping, and they've always got a huge range of Pico track in stock ready to go, so I've never had to wait for them to order it in. The majority of the track I'm using down here is this Flexi track, Pico code SL100. Each section is 914mm long, and I've been buying it in bulk packs of 25 lengths, which is slightly more cost effective. It's called FlexiTrack because it's flexible and you can bend it to whatever angle you need it to be. It can do that because the plastic sleepers at the back have gaps between them. This is obviously great because you can create pretty much any radius curve you want. However, there are a few things you need to consider when working with this stuff. It doesn't tend to hold its shape very well, so if you bend it into a curve, it won't stay exactly where you've put it and it'll try to spring back. So when you're laying it, you'll need a way to hold it in position, and I'll show you how I did this a bit later. On the subject of holding it in place, unlike Hornby track, the sleepers don't have pre-drilled holes in them for track pins, so if you want to use pins or screws, you'll need to drill your own holes. And also, the track doesn't come with rail joiners, so you need to buy these separately. And unlike set track, where it neatly fits together as a fixed geometry, you're almost certainly going to need to cut this into whatever length you need it to be. I've tried a few methods of cutting this stuff, including a fine-tooth hacksaw and snippers, but my preferred method is to use a rotary tool with a large cutting disc, which cuts through the rail very cleanly, and then you just need to give the ends of the rails a quick file down to get rid of any burrs and you're good to go. So now let's go finish the track work on boards 4 and 5. Okay, so as you've seen, I've already laid a bit of track around here, and I've basically been experimenting to find out the best way of laying track and what works for me and what I found doesn't work. And I think I've come up with a method that seems to be working quite well. But if you've got another way of laying track, then do let me know in the comments. But step one for me is to print out the track plan from any rail on A4 bits of paper, stick them all together and then lay them on the baseboard and get them into roughly the right position. So I'm happy with where this is now. Step two is that I like to lay out, especially for these more complicated areas, the track on top. So if we put these down, so that's all the point work laid out roughly in the right place, and overall I'm pretty happy with it. And the main thing to check is that where we've got the wooden baseboard cross members coming across, that they're not going to interfere with any wiring or point motors, and I think we're okay. This is the nearest point motor and there's sufficient space to fit it in. The one thing I have noticed though, and this is my bad planning, is that where I've got 2 points coming off another point, these 2 points, their tie bars end up very close together and could end up interfering. We've got the same situation up here. So what I think I'm going to do is just move this one slightly further up and move this one slightly further up. So when we come to connect it all on the baseboard over on the workbench, I just need to remember to do that. But once you're relatively happy with it, the next step for me is to take my scalpel or my craft knife and just score along the rails to make sure I've got marks in the underlay, and that will show me where to lay the track when we take this over to the workbench. So now I can take this away, and underneath I should have the outline of my track plan. And it might not look very pretty at the moment, but you won't be able to see these lines once the track is laid. So now I'll take this over to the workbench and we can start installing the track. Okay, so I've brought the staging unit over to the workbench because it's easier to work on here. And I've got my 8 sets of points. The only thing that's changed here is that I've wired them all up with the dropper wires and the frog wire. And as I said, don't worry too much about wiring. I'll do a completely separate video on that. But if you do want to know how I wire up my electro frog points, then I'll put a link to a video up here that's all about points. I've also got my small camera so I can give you a close-up view of what I'm doing. I have got a 10mm drill bit, and this is the drill bit we're going to use to drill the hole under the tie bar for the point motor. I've got a 5mm drill bit and I'm going to use that to drill the holes for the dropper wires and the frog wires. I've got my drill, obviously to do some drilling, and I've got my vacuum cleaner so I can clean up after myself as I go. The only other thing I've got is this small drill bit. It doesn't have to be a drill bit, but it's just something small enough that I can poke it through the tie bar and mark where the center of the point is, and that will show me where to drill, so it will leave a mark in the underlay. So let's start with this point first of all. So if I put it into position, I'll move my little camera so you can see what I'm doing. And the first thing I'm going to do is center the point blades so that they're in the middle. So there you can see that. And then I'm going to take my small pointy thing, poke through the center of the tie bar, and that will leave a mark in the underlay. And at the same time, I may as well mark where my dropper wires are. So you can see there, those dropper wires are in the middle. And also I'll mark where the frog wire comes through. So now I know where I can drill all my holes. So if I take that away, I can easily see I've got a drill there, there, and there. So I'll start by drilling a hole for the point motor using the 10mm drill bit. This is when I discovered the 10mm drill bit was blunt and took ages to get through the board. Fortunately, I found a sharper bit of the same size for drilling the rest of the point motor holes. I have no idea where this handheld vacuum came from, but it's ridiculously loud and has a pitiful amount of suction. And then I'm going to drill the 5mm hole for the wiring. It's a lot quicker. So now I should just be able to slot these points into place. I found that the 5mm holes are just large enough to easily get the wires through and hold the point in roughly the right place on the baseboard. They're big enough to allow a small amount of wiggle room if you need to adjust the position slightly, but they're not so big that all your ballast is going to fall through them. So that's my first set of points in place, and now I need to put a couple of insulated rail joiners into this frog. So that's our first set of points in, and now I can start working on this second set of points. Hi there, this is the voice of future Rob who's doing the editing, and I'll be taking over the narration briefly because past Rob's brain wasn't able to talk coherently whilst working, and it turns out 15 minutes of footage of me fitting another 3 sets of points in real time whilst waffling wasn't riveting content. So here's the condensed version of events. Using the marks I'd made on the underlay as my guide, I followed exactly the same process you've just seen of fitting the point in position, centering the tie bar and marking the 3 places that I needed to drill. The points were then lifted, the holes drilled and the wires fed through. These first 4 points all connect directly together, and because they're electro frog, I was using the nylon insulated rail joiners on the frogs and the normal Pico metal rail joiners on the other rails. Let's up the pace and get another 2 sets of points installed. So that's my first 4 sets of points in. So we're halfway in getting these installed. We're at a point now, if I show you on the small camera, where I need to make a small length of flexi track in here to bridge to the next set of points which go here. So what I'm going to do is get one of my offcuts of flexi track that I've got over there and see which one is closest to fitting, and then we might have to do a bit of cutting to make it fit exactly. Okay, so I've been through my offcuts of flexi track and I found this piece which is roughly the right length. If I put it down and I get the small camera, you'll see that this is how long it is and that's where I need it to end. So it's about 1.5 centimeters too long, so I will need to cut it, but that's not a problem. We can do that with our rotary tool, and I'll show you how I do that in a second. First thing I'm going to do though is trim some of these plastic sleepers off either end. So off the end that's going to connect to the point, I'm just going to remove the last couple of sleepers so that I've got enough room to slide the rail joiners on. I'm using my snippers here to cut through the plastic webbing that holds the sleepers together, and I'm trying to avoid nipping the rail. Sometimes it's easier to pop the sleepers off the rail and fold them back so you can easily get to the plastic. I'm going to cut the rail shorter at the other end, so I want to remove a few more sleepers here. I keep all the sleepers I've cut off. You never know when they might come in useful for filling gaps under track work, or I've used them for scenic stuff in the past, such as creating a barrow crossing or just for decoration in a yard. And I'll need to remove another sleeper here because it's getting in the way of the tie bar from the point next to it. Removing that extra sleeper and spacing everything out has made enough room for the tie bar to move freely, so now it's time to mark up the rails where I want to cut them. I use a pencil to make marks on the rails, and that will show me where to cut using the rotary tool. As I said before, I've tried cutting track a few different ways, but I find the rotary tool the quickest and easiest way to get clean cut, especially with this flexible extension and large cutting discs. All I do is place the track I want to cut on a flat surface with the part I want to remove overhanging the edge. You can clamp the track down, but it's just as effective to hold it in place with your hand. Use the surface to keep your hands nice and steady, then line the rotary tool up along the rail that you're cutting so that the disc is just above your cut mark. Check that the disc isn't at an angle, you're aiming to make the cut as straight as possible, and then move the disc down through the rail. Always wear goggles when doing this, as bits of metal can come off the rails and the discs themselves can be quite fragile and sometimes break apart. If you've got any burrs after cutting, then a quick file of the rail ends will sort that out. There we go, a clean cut bit of track ready to be added to the layout. Then it was time to get back to fitting the final 4 sets of points. I like to take my time when laying track because it's important to get it right, but for the video I've squeezed a couple of hours work into just over a minute. Points 5 and 6 were straightforward and followed the original track plan. The final 2 sets of points were the ones that needed to be moved out slightly from the track they're connecting to, which meant cutting short sections of track for each of them to extend the toe of the point. It's really satisfying when you can see track come together like this, especially for something like a points ladder, which I think is quite impressive to look at. If you've got any tips on laying track, then please leave them in the comments. I'm just showing you how I've done things, but this doesn't mean it's the only way of doing things. I'm by no means an expert, and I'm always on the lookout for ways to improve. I won't be gluing any of these points down until I've put the board in place and connected the tracks up to make sure everything works properly, but the wires going through the board will hold the points roughly in position for the time being. So this is where I got to before Christmas, and seeing as the video is already 20 minutes long, it feels like a sensible place to take a break. I really would have liked to have had this board in place and connected up, but things got in the way, and that'll have to happen in a future episode. A huge thank you to all the members and patrons who contribute to the channel. I massively appreciate your support, and it really does help to keep the content coming. That's it for this video, thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you again soon.